was halfway through Oklahoma on Highway 270, cutting east toward Fort Smith. I'd taken back roads most of the day to avoid interstate traffic, and by the time the sun dipped below the trees, I hadn't seen another car for nearly 30 minutes. The road narrowed as the last gas station faded behind me, giving way to long stretches of cracked pavement and uneven shoulders. According to my GPS, I still had 2 hours of driving left, and most of that would be in the dark. When the lights appeared behind me, I didn't think much of it. They were dim at first, maybe a mile back. I glanced at them now and then in the mirror. Steady, low beam, not weaving. After a few minutes, red and blue strobes lit up beneath them. I slowed immediately. There was no siren, just the pulsing of lights behind my rear window. I checked my speed, 63 in a 60. There was no shoulder wide enough to pull over, so I drove for another 30 seconds until the road widened near a gravel turnout. I pulled in and shifted into park. The lights remained steady behind me, 20 feet back. I rolled the window down and turned the interior lights on. The person approached slowly on the driver's side. Tan uniform, ball cap, one hand on a flashlight, the other holding something clipped to a wallet. "Evening, sir. License and registration." I reached over to the glove compartment and passed them both through the window. The man took them without comment. He didn't shine the light in my face or ask where I was headed. I looked in the side mirror. No patrol car behind mine, just the beams from a standard-looking SUV parked diagonally across the road. The badge had been leather, but there was no insignia I recognized. He glanced over my license, said nothing. No questions, no instructions. Just stood still, flipping the card between his fingers. I leaned slightly to the left. No nameplate on the shirt, no belt radio, no sidearm. He folded the wallet closed and held the documents loosely at his side. "Everything all right?" I asked. He didn't respond. The SUV's headlights were still aimed directly at the car, washing out the edges of the road. I couldn't make out any markings on its side. The man turned slightly and walked away from the window. Not back to the SUV, just off to the edge of the turnout, still holding my license. I waited. After about 20 seconds, I reached for the door. He turned back sharply. I stopped moving. "No need to get out," he said. "Just sit tight." His voice was neutral, not aggressive, but not casual either. I stayed still, watched his silhouette move again toward the tree line. He wasn't on a radio. He didn't make any call. After a full minute of him, walking slowly around the edge of the turnout, I opened the center console. My phone still had signal, 1 bar. I didn't call. Just opened the camera and started recording video, keeping the lens aimed through the windshield. The man circled around the rear of my car. I saw his outline past the trunk, then along the passenger side. He stopped just past the front bumper. I rolled the window up halfway. He returned to the window a moment later and held out my license. "You're good to go," he said. I took it without a word. He didn't move, just stood there beside the car. After a few seconds, I shifted into drive. I didn't wait for him to return to the SUV. I pulled back onto the highway and kept the speed at 55. The SUV didn't follow. I kept checking the mirror every 10 seconds for the next 30 miles. I didn't see another vehicle until I reached a chain gas station near a town I didn't know. I parked near the pumps, but didn't get out. Sat there for a long time, watching the traffic along the road. No other uniforms, no lights, just a few cars, coming and going. I played back the recording on my phone. The video was mostly glare and darkness, but his silhouette was clear. Unmarked uniform, no badge visible. I went inside and asked the attendant behind the counter if there was a local patrol car in the area. He said no one worked that stretch at night. No reason to. County coverage started 20 miles east. I didn't ask anything else. I stayed there until 2 more people came in, then left and continued to the motel without stopping again. In the morning, I checked the highway report. No police stops were recorded in that area for the previous night. No active patrols logged. I was halfway through Kansas when I left the highway for the scenic route. A coworker had mentioned it during a casual conversation. State Route 148, running parallel to the interstate, completely empty and more peaceful than the endless 18-wheelers that clogged the I-70. It sounded like a better option, especially with another 4 hours ahead of me and a headache creeping in from the fluorescent lights at the last rest stop. The turnoff was barely marked, a dented green sign and a single arrow pointing left. I made the turn and saw no other cars, just low hills, empty fields, and a line of telephone poles stretching toward the horizon. The sun was low, but not yet gone. It coated everything in orange. The road, the gravel shoulders, the tall grass beyond the fence lines. 15 minutes in, I passed a metal sign bolted to a wooden post on the right side of the road. It looked new, brighter than the rusted markers around it. Do not stop for anyone. The words were printed in block letters, no logo, no agency name, no damage or bullet holes like every other sign I'd passed. It caught my attention, but only for a moment. Probably local kids or a prank, maybe a leftover from a film set. The road narrowed as it curved gently eastward. No turnoffs, no structures. I checked my phone, no service. There was still half a tank in the car. Nothing in the engine sounded off. I kept going. 10 minutes later, a figure emerged from the right-hand side of the road. He didn't step into view. He lurched forward from behind a broken fence post, stumbling hard into the middle of the lane. I braked and veered slightly left to avoid hitting him. He dropped to one knee on the pavement. His shirt was torn open, one shoe missing, blood across his chest, neck, and face. Dark, dried in places, still wet in others. He looked no older than 30. No visible wounds I could make out from inside the car. But he was barely holding himself up. He raised his hand weakly. The car had already slowed to a crawl. I stopped fully, maybe 5 yards in front of him. The sign came back to mind. He didn't move toward the vehicle, just stayed there, holding himself up with one hand on the asphalt, head down. I locked the doors. His legs shook as he stood. He took a half step forward, then stopped. Blood covered the front of his jeans. I couldn't tell if it was his. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. He reached toward the windshield, then stumbled sideways and dropped to the ground again. My hands hovered over the steering wheel. The sun dipped behind the trees to the west. I reversed slowly, putting 10 feet between us. He didn't move. There were no other cars, no buildings, nothing. He turned his head toward the car, then toward the ditch, then back again. I watched him look over his shoulder, not once, but twice, in quick succession. His entire body flinched as he tried to push himself upright again. Then I saw movement on the edge of the field, not close. 200 yards out, maybe more. Another figure upright, stationary, hard to see in the low light. It didn't move, but the man on the road saw it too. He looked at it, then at me. He waved again, faster this time. I didn't open the window. I didn't unlock the doors. He screamed. I couldn't hear it through the glass, but I saw his mouth open wide and his body twist as he fell again. He stayed down. I drove forward slowly, passing him on the shoulder, tires bumping along the edge of the road. In the mirror, I saw him sit up one final time before collapsing fully. The other figure in the field remained in place. It looked in my direction. I pressed the gas harder. Another 15 minutes passed before I saw a sign for an intersecting road. I turned right, even though it led west and away from my route. I followed it until the trees cleared and a cluster of houses appeared on the horizon. I stopped at the first open gas station and went inside. The cashier was leaning on the counter, watching a small TV near the register. I asked if there was any emergency service nearby. He said the closest station was 30 miles north. I asked if anyone had called in a man injured on the road. He said no reports had come in that day. I asked if he knew the sign, the one on 148. He paused, then nodded once. Saw it once, he said. A long time ago. He didn't elaborate. I didn't ask anything else. I left without buying anything. Rechecked the locks when I got back in the car. I never saw another sign like it. I took Route 73 west out of Eldon around midday, planning to reach the state border before dark. No real schedule, just an excuse to drive without traffic, without reception, without anything pulling at my time. About an hour out, the terrain opened up into a long stretch of switchbacks, climbing higher into the hills. Guardrails were rusted, road paint barely visible. Most of the drive looked untouched. No houses, no traffic. No signs of human presence beyond the cracked pavement. Somewhere past mile marker 42, I pulled over at a gravel turnout marked as a scenic overlook. The view dropped out in layers, sloping ridgelines, yellow brush, a small reservoir in the far distance. The sky was clear. I took 3 or 4 shots with my phone and walked closer to the edge of the railing for a wider angle. It was quiet, no wind, no birds. To the right of the overlook, maybe 30 meters past the tree line, I noticed a slope that led down to a flatter patch of dirt. A break in the brush suggested it had been walked recently. The trail wasn't obvious from the road. I stepped past the first line of branches and followed the flattened path. It curved down around a small outcrop and ended in a wide, hard-packed clearing. Someone had camped there recently. The ground was trampled. There were square outlines in the dirt where a tent had been pitched. No ash or coals, no food wrappers, no bottles. A set of tire tracks led to the edge of the clearing but disappeared beyond a cluster of scrub oak. Near the center, a blue tarp was laid out flat, weighted at each corner with small rocks. On top of it, a folded plastic sheet, still partly wrapped in a shipping label. 2 lengths of nylon rope, each coiled and secured with zip ties. A folding utility knife. A fixed blade hunting knife with a serrated spine. A third knife, still in its packaging. All 3 were clean. No scratches, no residue. None looked used. Next to the tarp was a duffel bag. I didn't touch it. I stood for a moment, unsure if someone was nearby. I looked around the perimeter. No movement, no other trails, no noise. My car wasn't visible from here. I backed up the way I came and returned to the overlook, checked the road. Still empty in both directions. There were no plate fragments, no fire pit, no signs of actual camping. Just the layout. Precise. Controlled. I stayed parked for a few minutes, then opened my dash cam app and pulled footage from the last 10 minutes. The front camera had a wide enough angle to capture the overlook entrance. No vehicles had passed since I'd parked. I checked the phone again. No signal. I marked the location in my GPS history and kept driving. About 20 minutes later, a faded gas station came into view. The kind that sold more cigarettes and jerky than actual fuel. I pulled in, filled the tank, and went inside to pay. The clerk looked around, 50, sun-damaged skin, sleeveless flannel, one boot on the counter. I asked if law enforcement patrolled that road. Often. He said they only came through once a week, if that. I asked if he knew the overlook past mile 42. He nodded once. Dead spot. No reception for about 6 miles either side. Power lines skip that stretch. I asked if people camped near there. He paused. Not anymore. I didn't ask anything else. I stepped out and used the station's Wi-Fi to upload the dashcam clip and pin the location. The upload stalled halfway. I waited until it finished, then checked the duffel image again. I hadn't realized I took it from the overlook. When I zoomed in for a shot of the valley, the tarp and bag were visible in the bottom right corner. The knives were arranged differently than I remembered. I left immediately and stayed on main roads for the rest of the day. I kept an eye on the rear view. Nothing followed, nothing trailed. But every time I stopped, I checked the passenger seat for the uploaded clip, the files on my phone, and the marked GPS location. Just to confirm they were still there. They were. 3 days later, I checked again. The folder I'd saved them in was empty. The cloud backup still showed the file name. No thumbnail, no preview. I didn't return to look for the clearing. The overlook is still listed on a few hiking forums, but recent comments say the turnout is blocked off by a temporary barrier. No reason listed, no reports, no missing persons, nothing in the local news. The image I took of the tarp remains in my phone's deleted folder, but the metadata is missing and the timestamp says it was taken 2 days after I left the area. I didn't retake it